How do I start a food truck in Indiana? And what food truck permit in Indiana do you need? Well, welcome to Food Truck Freaks, YouTube's premier food truck entrepreneur channel. This is a brand new channel. We are not new to YouTube. We actually have 3 other food entrepreneur channels. You can check out our links down below in the video. But in this particular video, we're going to cover all the permits and licenses that you would probably need to get your Indiana food truck up and running. And what I mean by probably is that, of course, every city and county vary as to what they might need, but these are in general permits and licenses that many food trucks are required to have. And we're going to run through that list and check out the free additional resources below the video on our website as well. And let's jump right into it. So if you're looking to start a food truck business in Indiana, it actually is a great idea. Here's a few reasons why food trucks are genius ideas still, even with so many in multiple counties and cities all over the US and fastly growing. It's because it's not a huge investment if you're wanting to get into the restaurant business or food industry. Investing in a restaurant compared to a food truck is a much smaller investment. The risk, if you happen to start a food truck and maybe it's just not your thing, or maybe it doesn't work out financially, is not going to be as heavy of a loss as it would be for a restaurant or something on a larger scale. You have less employees. In many cases, you can do as many shows as you wish and you can do, and that allows you to create a huge amount of revenue in comparison to a brick and mortar, which you're relying on the customer to come directly to you. You can attend gigantic festivals, farmers markets, fairs, things that could have 20 or 30, 40,000 people on a weekend, or even 5,000 or 6,000 people. So the variation in what you can make is gigantic and enormous, but it's not a huge investment in comparison to brick and mortars. Having run an actual Italian bakery and sandwich shop myself, I can tell you that our brick and mortar costs way more than actually running a food truck. So let's dive into these specific permits and licenses. Now, you're going to need an EIN. That is known as an employer identification number. That is something you can get directly from the IRS website. That is an IRS issued number. It's kind of like a social security number for your business, okay? Now, the reason why you need that is that down the road, as you have personnel, you have employees, you're gonna need help. And when you hire them, you're gonna need to have an employer identification number for tax purposes and to keep track of all of that income coming in and going out. So make sure that you get an EIN. Obviously, your accountant will tell you that you're gonna need one, and make sure that's one of the first things you do right off the bat. Next up, your business license. So of course, to operate any type of food business in general, just a traditional standard business license issued by the city or the county that you're actually operating your food truck in Indiana, you need to make sure that you get a business license. Now, some counties and cities, as you cross over those lines, most states will require additional business licenses or permits to operate the mobile food truck in those counties and cities, because technically you're operating in a totally different city or a totally different county. Even though it is your food truck and it's issued in one specific place, you're going to be generating money and having a business operation in a separate county. They're going to want to make sure that you have a license in that county. Next up, now this might be a no-brainer, but I'll tell you the reason why this is super important. Valid driver's license. Of course, you need a valid driver's license for you to actually drive your food truck, obviously, around town. But the most important reason why is because if you have an employee or you have a worker on your food truck and you're not on that food truck that day, if that employee doesn't have a valid license, or anyone who is on the vehicle, who's operating the vehicle, driving around, remember this: your food truck is your business. It is your livelihood. Okay, if you have an employee who's driving and they have a suspended license, or they have a license but they don't have it on them, and they get into an accident, or they run a red light, or they get pulled over by a police officer, you have the potential, you, the owner of the food truck, could lose your food truck license, or you could get obviously you get a ticket, and you could get a suspension of your license itself, you as the owner. Keep in mind, it may sound kind of funny or kind of vague, but yes, a valid driver's license for whomever is behind the wheel, if you're not going to be the one driving, you could have a lot of liability on your hands. So make sure at all times, whoever is driving your vehicle has a valid driver's license issued obviously by the state of Indiana, and they have the ability to drive the vehicle. Now, in some cities and counties too, double check within the county that you're in, they may require a certain class license to drive a food truck. I've heard of this before. Many counties and cities throughout the US, it's not a state thing, it's actually a city or county thing, that they're going to require you to have a special permit or special license to drive the sides of your truck. Similar to what they issue for food truck drivers, not food truck, but actually big 18-wheeler truck drivers have a different class licensing. So make sure that's something you need. Next up, a seller permit. So a food truck owner basically needs to have a seller's permit, which allows you to buy your ingredients at wholesale prices. A lot of food truck first timers don't realize this, but you should never pay tax when you purchase ingredients. If you purchase any foods, veggies, whoever you're getting from your vendors locally or even stores, you need to make sure you get a tax exempt. That allows you to not pay taxes on that particular ingredient because you're going to collect taxes when you sell that. Does that make sense? And this is something that's a lot just for new people. If you're new and you haven't understood this before, that is something that will happen. You can simply just not pay taxes on the ingredients, but you're going to collect that when you sell it to your customer. Okay, next up, ultra important, very important, food safety certification or food handler's permit as it's known. So a food handler's permit is required in a lot of cities and counties, basically for the employees who are on the food truck preparing food, storing food. If you're refrigerating, at the end of the day, once you clean up, everything about the preparation of the food, the serving of it, and storing of the food has to be done correctly, because you don't want people obviously to get sick with an ingredient that you have because you did not understand how to properly seal it, properly contain it, or cook it. So food handlers permits, and they're also something that if it's not required, if you have your staff, you have your employees on your food truck go through a permit program and get the food handler's card, it's also going to be a benefit for you, because that way you're not questioning whether or not something was cooked correctly, or if this was sanitized correctly, or if this was in storage. So food handler's permit is something that you may also need as well. And if you don't, check into just getting one anyways. Health department. So that's the next one up. You're going to be inspected by your local health department. You're going to have a permit. Now, normally, by the way, food trucks will have to have a commissary or a commercial kitchen that they are attached to, quote unquote. And what I mean by that is that every food truck will have to prepare food, prepare ingredients, empty out dirty water for the day, their garbage, their trash. So having a commissary kitchen is normally, it's a normal thing for food trucks to have. So if you're within a certain city or county, you'll be attached to that particular commercial kitchen or that particular commissary kitchen. So in Indiana, make sure you double check with the county and make sure that you've got one of those, because that's probably also going to be the place where you're going to be preparing your ingredients. And the reason why I say probably is because most of the food prep prior to going to an event with a food truck has to be done in a commissary kitchen or commercial kitchen. Very few actually allow you to cook, prepare, and do everything on the food truck 100%. So having the day's ingredients set up, having fresh water for the day, emptying out any dirty water from your event, getting your trash disposal, all of that stuff is on a daily basis every time you do an event. And that's most likely what you're going to need. So having that license from a commissary kitchen is what the health department is predominantly going to look for. And you may also need to have what's known as a commissary letter of agreement. This is actually the contract you're going to have with the particular commercial kitchen or commissary, and you need to make sure that you have that as well, because a lot of states also require you to keep that letter on your food truck. Next up, and lastly, fire certificate, a fire permit, the inspection from the fire department. Now, they're going to look for and also request, in most cases, you're going to have multiple fire extinguishers. You're going to make sure that your propane generators or gas generators are hooked up correctly, that you understand that all of the electrical work done, if you have a customized truck, it has to be up to code, and that's going to be inspected by the fire department as well. So be sure that you check with the county on that. As also, your fire department will have to come in and look at the fire exits, if it happens to be also where all of the unit is. A lot of states will even require, cities and counties will require you to actually have a design or a drawing or a draft of the interior, how everything is laid out, before they even issue a permit or a license. So find out for sure whether or not you're going to need a fire certificate as well. So all in all, these are the most simplistic and basic permits and licenses that you're going to need within the city that you're going to operate from. Also, like I said before, check to make sure that you may or may not have to have those additional permits every time you cross the line into another city or county, that you got to have that business license in order for you to operate. Keep in mind too, any sales tax you collect, you've got to remit that and send that to the state either annually, every 6 months, or quarterly, every 3 months. Now, us as our business is concerned, because I operate a food business, we do it every year, just once a year. But you need to make sure that your state sets you up on a specific payment process and payment plan for that. Okay, so those are permits and licenses that the majority of food trucks will always need to have. You need to make sure that you have the right ones, and also follow any parking permits that you may need as well. That's something that comes up too, is that you may need to pay for the parking specifically in a certain part of the area where you're going to go. It also is for duration of time and is limiting you also to where you can do it. Keep in mind any of the local municipalities and laws that are set up specifically for parking your food truck as well. So if you guys are new to the channel, best you can subscribe, definitely subscribe. We have a lot of great new content going to be filling up our channel, and I'll see you guys on our next video.